Hello, everyone, and welcome to Moneycontrol. We're here to talk about the future of mobility. Now, 2021 has officially kicked off the EV craze, and it looks like 2022 has something even greater to offer when it comes to electric mobility. But the big question still remains, is the Indian consumer ready to make the switch? Joining us today is the MD of Volvo Cars India, Mr. Jyoti Malhotra, along with whom we have Karan Virwani, the CEO of WeWork India, and Ravin Meerchandani, the chairman of Adore Power. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to Money Control. Jyoti, I'd like to start with you first, given that you're at the helm of this sweeping change that's taking place at Volvo. The first EV offered by Volvo Cars India and a new EV to come every year. Tell us, where do you think the EV market is in India right now?
Hi, Parth. As you rightly said, I think as far as Volvo is concerned, we are committed to move towards electrification. Not only here in India, even globally, we have committed that by 2030 we will become a full electric car company, and by 2025, 50% of our volumes are going to come from electrified cars. Having said that, for Indian market, I believe we have seen a very fast acceleration in adoption of electric cars in last 1 year. 1 year back, consumer was largely in a, I would say, a curiosity stage. There was a lot of curiosity. People were asking a lot of questions. They had a lot of curious things in their mind. I think many people, many consumers have now crossed that line, and we are seeing that they are ready to now move forward and actually purchase cars. And we are seeing that the manufacturers who have the cars available in the market are getting a good traction. And we see stories coming from two wheelers, how fast that is moving. We hear stories about some of the passenger car which are available now on EVs are gaining traction day by day, month after month. So I believe Indian consumer is now ready to move to electrification and electrified cars.
Now, Jyoti, do you believe that the transition to electric mobility will be faster in the luxury segment, which is where Volvo Cars India essentially operates?
I would say typically two key questions here. And the first question is about the range of the car that the car offers, and second is the availability of charging infrastructure. Okay, if you put both things, these are the big questions that needs to be answered. Our thought is that uh, if the range is, let's say, more than 400 kilometers in with a single charge, and with even the sort of charging infrastructure which will be in place, let's say 1 year from now, I believe that unless someone has to really travel from, let's say, Delhi to Mumbai, which is not that common, but for other such commutes where one has to travel, go and come back, this electric car can be quite reliable. And if two things are answered: one, range above 400 kilometers, and second, a decent enough public infrastructure which is already taking shape, and I believe it will be in place by that time. I think this car, a luxury car, can serve the purpose for such a commute.
Right. But Jyoti, what has been your feedback from existing customers of Volvo Cars and potential first adopters when it comes to EVs?
Yeah, so I think we have been, I think, in touch with our customers. We are trying to pick up some insights, and obviously there are questions, concerns, which we need to answer. Not only us, I would see the whole industry needs to answer. First is customer understands that the EV technology is new. It is, but it is also a new technology. It is costlier than, let's say, the IC engine technology, which was already there for a very long time. But the question is, customer is ready to pay a premium, but how much? So we need to find a sweet spot where customer is ready to sort of pay a premium above ICE. And we believe if we can find the right spot, that is the first concern which we can answer by pricing the car in a way. Government has done its own bit. There are, whether it's from a GST perspective or from a road tax perspective, there are good support available. So together with government, we can, I think, bridge this gap and come and find the sweet spot. So that's the first one. The second one is about the range and the charging infrastructure. And range, as I said, I think if we can have our cars in the range of, I would say, 400 kilometers or thereabout, and a decent enough charging infrastructure, that can really take care. As far as luxury car owners are concerned, what they want is, typically they want a home charging solution. This home would mean home and office. So if a charger is installed, one at the home and one at the workplace, it sort of takes away this anxiety. So I think, again, this question also, I think we believe we should be ready to answer. Then the question comes with regard to, let's say, battery life. There are a lot of questions. There's a new technology. Okay, I may be saving fuel cost, but what about battery? When do I need to replace the battery? What is the life of this battery? So I think we need to come out and answer this question by offering, I would say, a longish battery warranty on these cars, which can also take care of these anxiety. And then the last question typically which comes is about the serviceability of these cars. Are the manpower at dealerships ready? Are they skilled enough to take care of these cars? What will be the cost of service? So again, I think we need to answer this in terms of having the right sort of skill level at our dealerships, and that program is already underway. We also need to ensure that the right infrastructure at dealerships are available to service these cars, and we sort of create to offer, I would say, a peace of mind to our customer through a service package, so that this become a real compelling package for customers to move forward and take a plunge and move away from ICE and buy an EV. And I think if you answer these questions with the pricing, charging, range, battery life, serviceability, if you can find answers, I think we can have customers moving and buying electric cars.
Purely from a consumer perspective, Karan, I'd like to know, where do you stand on electric mobility?
Thank you for having me, firstly. I'm a big proponent and like a believer in the need for change, especially when it comes to the climate and the environment, and try to practice that in my everyday life as much as possible. I think my entire generation, as well, or a lot of people my age and the generations that are, younger than me, I have this ingrained in our, thought process that doing things for the environment or making the environment better is what's required. And I think the EV revolution is a big start to that, and it's a big it's going to be a big part of everyone's life moving forward.
Ravan, being a part of the EV infrastructure space, obviously this is a space you're very, very familiar with, and you have lots to say on the matter. Where do you stand on electric mobility, and where do you see it going?
Okay, thanks for the question. I'm obviously a little bit biased because my life is spent on converting people to electric vehicles. But if you look at India's vehicles on the road, there's about 300 million vehicles that are registered plying on the roads today, and 82% of those are 2- and 3-wheeled vehicles. About 9% are cars, and the balance is made up between trucks and buses. Today, the total cost of ownership for a 2-wheeler has already crossed over. It is, in fact, the same, or if not cheaper, to move to an electric 2-wheeler or an electric 3-wheeler. That's already happened. And so my argument to you would be that the people buying ICE engine 2-wheelers in 2022 will be the last cycle that's doing so. In 3 or 4 years, when they're ready to replace their vehicles, they'd be buying electric. And I'd say that would be the same for most people buying cars in the small mini segment of cars in India in 2022. When those come for replacement in 2026 or 2027, the natural automatic choice would be electric. So I see that by the end of this decade, we will have a significant component of electric on the roads in India.
But Ravan, looking at a future forecast, given that 2030 has sort of been earmarked as the time when, high period of EV sales and high sales penetration, do you really see the next 6 to 7 years propelling us to widespread adoption? Do you think, particularly in the 4-wheeler segment, do you think it will happen quicker?
I think there are a number of roadblocks that get us to faster adoption. I really like that question. And most people put it down to range anxiety. Most people think that the reason electric vehicles aren't being sold is because people are worried about range. And I think that's probably 30 to 40% of the reason for a slow adoption at the moment. The other two big ones are cost, of course. As the cost of lithium batteries comes down, cars and trucks and buses will become a lot more affordable when it comes to electric versus ICE. And the big one is financing. You don't very easily get financing for an electric vehicle today because banks don't quite get their heads around or haven't quite understood what happens when your lithium batteries start to degrade. What's going to be the after sale value? What's going to be the cost of replacing the lithium in 4 or 5 years? Is it going to be 4 or 5 years for a particular kind of vehicle versus another? A lot of these things have to be understood by the finance industry and by the automobile consumer before you start getting decisions to move towards electric vehicles. The charging infrastructure is rapidly being put in place. You have charge point operators, some 40 charge point operators in India today, mostly startups, but the big boys, Reliance and Adani, are getting into this. So you'll see a big change over the next 2 to 3 years in availability of charging infrastructure. The government has made PLIs available and investment stops available for battery factories. So you'll see big gigafactories coming to India by 2025. 3 have been announced in Gujarat, which should be inaugurated by 2025-26, which will have an impact on the cost of batteries. And finally, different chemistries. Looking beyond lithium, you'll have chemistries such as sodium ion, which will greatly reduce the cost of the electric vehicle. Although because of its lower energy density, sodium ion is likely more to be used for rickshaws and trucks. But all of these things coming together within the next 2 or 3 years, or 4 years actually, is what you're going to see impacting the decision towards electrical vehicle adoption in India.
Now, coming purely from an infrastructure POV, where do you think office spaces come into this? WeWork, as I understand, recently hosted a test ride for an electric product. Is it fair to assume that you would be looking at installing charging points, perhaps even fast charging points when it comes to WeWork buildings?
It's an area we're exploring with some of our partners or some, operators. The beauty with our business is that we're spread across the city, and we have assets that have the power infrastructure already built into place, and this makes it easy for people who have EVs to access. And also, I guess, if you look at a working population actually spending more time in the office than at their residence, so it becomes the perfect place for people to actually use also for charging when the car's sitting ideal, in most parking garages. So we're trying to figure out a way that we can provide this as a service. If you look at all of the tech parks, the business parks, business hubs, residential, apartments, as well as office spaces that we have spanned across the entire country, they become perfect places that allow for something like this.
Jyoti, my next question is, safety, of course, is one of the bedrocks other than luxury for Volvo cars. And given that there is a lot of apprehension and lack of awareness when it comes to EVs, is there something in particular that a Volvo EV adds or brings to the table on the safety front?
So, as you rightly said, as far as Volvo is concerned, for us, safety is in our genes. And we are now saying it is not just safety, but also sustainability. Whatever we do has to be safe and sustainable. I can be very confident in saying that our EV cars uh, are as safe as our ICE cars. So the whole XE40 recharge or the recharge range that we have in our plans, when it comes to safety, they offer as good a quality or safety as our ICE cars. So customer need not sort of worry from that perspective, because these cars are being designed from the very beginning to ensure when it comes to, let's say, safety about the battery, safety of how this pack is sort of placed in the car, and then the whole mechanics have to be planned accordingly, and that has been done. And when it comes to electric car from Volvo, we can absolutely confident about the safety aspect of these cars. Having said that, as I said, beyond safety, we also believe in sustainability. And these cars, our plan is that when these cars are manufactured, we are moving towards what we are calling as a circular economy. It may not happen overnight, but we want to make our commitment towards global climate, and some announcements are made during the COP26 as well with regard to this. And I think overall, our cars are going to be safe and sustainable, and there is no doubt about it. And we can have customers coming forward and with full confidence and buying our cars.
It's interesting that you mentioned the circular economy bit, Jyoti, because when it comes to tipping the scales in favor of EVs and allowing electric mobility to have that breakthrough moment, which hasn't happened yet, who do you think should lead the charge? Should it be the brands who should introduce local battery manufacturing or a sustainable local circular economy, like you mentioned? Should it be the government with the policies they introduce, or should it be the customer who should take a leap of faith when it comes to be willing to test new technology, even if the ecosystem is still a little patchy?
See, Parth, I think everyone needs to play its role, and I think whether it is individual customer, whether it is the OE, or whether it is the government, I think everyone needs to come together. And but I think as an individual, as a consumer, needs to understand that they have a role to play here. First, by making a choice of buying an electric car is first step. Thereon, I think one of the key things is going to be with regard to, let's say, charging of these cars. We are going to promote and encourage our customers to buy, let's say, not only electric charger, but also maybe have this powered through some sustainable. It could be a solar powered charging infrastructure at the dealership, at the consumer's house or factory or a workplace, or it could be some other renewable energy source of energy which can be done. And we will encourage, and I think each customer can make what they can do to improve and take care of this carbon footprint of individual as well. As a company, as an industry, we need to do what we need to do. So we need to set up whatever infrastructure, whether we do it at dealerships or wherever we set up. We try to ensure that these are then powered by renewable energy and not dependent on fossil fuel energy. And I think the government then plays a major role, that over a period of time, there is a need to shift from fossil fuel dependence on for electricity to renewable energy, and that I think the government has announced a lot. So I think everyone needs to come together and ensure that everyone does his or her role, or the government does, industry or individual does their job and their role to ensure that they contribute towards the sustainability movement. And I think we will encourage everyone to come forward and do it together.
So the responsibility starts first with government, because you need policies that push and incentivize the right infrastructure and ecosystem to be put in place. And that ecosystem is power electronics, as well as charging infrastructure, and most importantly, batteries. We have no gigafactories in India today. Everything comes from China. So the more we rely on policies to move to electric vehicles, the more we'll be buying from China. So the first cab off the rank is make sure that you have the right incentives in place for the battery factories to come here, the big gigafactories to come here, the right technologies to be implemented, the right charging standards, the right vehicle standards. Are we going to follow Chinese standards or European standards? These are all things that need to be made clear before the big investments are made by private industry to set up a electric vehicle factory or to set up battery factories, all of which cost you $1 billion just to get inside the door. Beyond that, then you have the other investments, which is in charging infrastructure, in swapping infrastructure, and finally you have the consumer. So I don't think we can expect the consumer, particularly in a developing economy like India, to be making the choice to go electric until we make it a logical and economic choice for the consumer. The recent announcements by the government, the PLI related schemes, the SOPs for battery as well as electric vehicle manufacturing, the move towards getting semiconductor chip fabs to India, means that you will see over the next 3 or 4 years this ecosystem develop. India is very strong in power electronics, which means that we have a natural base to be able to leverage to support electric vehicles. And then finally, we need training. A lot of service stations across the country have to move to be able to support electric vehicles from ICE vehicles. to be able to get to the point where, say, 2024 or 2025, buying an electric vehicle is the natural choice versus the unnatural choice it is today for consumers.
And my final question, of course, is the all too important topic of total cost of ownership. Now, of course, it's not as much of a concern, as you said, in the luxury sector. But is Volvo Cars India also looking at local battery manufacturing, local assembly of EVs in the near future? And are we likely to see that price gap close in the coming years?
All right, so see, let's first start from the cost. I think we all know this technology is new, and there are new investments, and definitely the cost per se of the car or the whole solution is quite steep as compared to, let's say, an IC engine. With I think which will over a period of time hopefully will take care of that. So as a manufacturer and working together with the local government, we need to ensure that we are able to bridge this gap. Government has done its bit when it comes to offering, let's say, whether it is on the GST front or it is on front of, let's say, road taxes or overall signaling from the government of supporting EV. So I think government is doing their bit. Now, taking that as a sort of support from the government, as a manufacturer, we need to also ensure that we are able to plug this gap and offer the right cost of the car to the dealership. And as I said, the total cost of ownership is including of the initial cost which a customer pays together with, let's say, the cost which is incurred over a period of time on maintenance and service. And I think so we need to ensure that we are offering the best price. There would be a premium, but I think a reasonable premium for this customer, and then that gets offset with the serviceability and the package which I was talking about, a service package and a battery warranty, which can take care of this whole cost of ownership. So I think we are coming to a point where I think customers will cross this line, and this debate about cost of ownership versus ICE versus EV is going to be behind us. And then when people come forward and buy, they will realize that the peace of mind which manufacturers, especially us, are going to offer will take care of that. And I believe that I think we are coming closer to the situation where EVs can become very, very viable for an individual customer to buy and enjoy.
Where do you stand on the way policies have emerged in the last year and all the developments that have taken place with regards to EVs? Ravin, let's start with you.
I actually think India's done a good job. We had a few stumbles along the way. We had FAME 1 and FAME 2. We had our own Indian charging standard, DC001 and Bharat AC001, which were an agglomeration of the Chinese codes. But since then, we've come a long way. Since FAME 2 has been released, since the PLI schemes have been announced, the government is right behind this. And it's not just Niti Aayog, but it's also the Ministry of Transport. It's also the Ministry of Highways. They're all right behind this. The Prime Minister has got this vision on zero emission mobility, including hydrogen. So I'd say for a developing economy, and also compared to some of the developed economies in the world, we are at par with the direction where the government wants to go in terms of policy and regulation. Next year is when you'll see the big financial investment push in this sector. And I'm overall very positive about where India is headed in terms of electric vehicle implementation.
And Karan, any closing thoughts?
No, I think the right message is coming from right up top. But to be honest, from a consumer angle and just from a speed angle, I think that they can be a lot faster. India always tends to be following policy or following some other nations, whether it's China or the US. I think we can definitely take steps first in this direction and sort of lead the change a lot more. But I'm hopeful, and I think that there's a big change happening for sure, and at least the message and the commitment from the topmost of the government is coming through, and over time it will happen.
Right. So enjoyability, peace of mind, and ease of maintenance. They seem like very, very pertinent points and perfect reasons to go for electric mobility. That brings us to the conclusion of this discussion. Gentlemen, thank you so much, Jyoti, Karan, and Ravin, for joining us.